You're listening to the Minutes on Growth podcast, the show that brings you mindfully curated insights into relationships, spirituality, personal development, and everything in between, with your host, Tannaz Hosseinpour.
Hi, soul friends. It's Tannaz, and welcome back to another short solo episode of the Minutes on Growth podcast. Last episode, we briefly talked about the race to finding the one as a result of social conditioning, social media, societal pressures. So today I want to talk about the process of finding the one. To begin with, does the one even exist? Because Disney and Hallmark movies have convinced us that they do, but like everything else, I would love for us to get curious with it. So let me ask you this. Are you the same person you are today as you were 5 or 10 years ago? Do you like the same things? Do you think the same way? Do you act the same way? Do you dress the same? You're most likely thinking to yourself, no, I've changed over the past decade, and rightfully so. As human beings, we are constantly growing and evolving, especially if we're being intentional with our personal development and self-growth journey, which I'm sure you are if you're listening to this episode. So if that's the case, then would the one, quote unquote, a decade ago be the one today for you? Would the same person be the one for the two different versions of you? Well, now it depends. Sometimes the answer is yes, because two people together, because couples can grow together, but they can also grow apart. And we've heard this often when couples break up of, oh, they weren't the same person they once were, or we're no longer compatible. And that's my point, that the one doesn't exist. The one right now definitely exists. There are over 7 billion people on this planet. So the likelihood of us only being right for just one person throughout our whole life statistically does not make sense. And in fact, honestly, it's a very disempowering belief too. By the way, this doesn't mean that you can't have forever with one person. You absolutely can. And as I mentioned before, many couples do grow together. But that doesn't mean that if you don't get to experience that, then you're doomed. So, who is the one for us right now? And it's the person, the answer is that it's the person with whom we have a connection, chemistry, and compatibility with. So it's the 3 magic C's. I will definitely get into the 3 C's in a future podcast episode, but today I want to dedicate the next few minutes to the question of, how do I find the one for me right now? And you might not like the answer, because the answer is shifting the way you see and experience dating. So many people want to find the person they can have the 3 magic C's with without having to date people who aren't right for them. But take a moment and think about it. How do you know who the right one for you even is? Chances are the experiences you've had with other people have helped you recognize what it is that you do want and do not want in a partner. When you go to the ice cream shop, you're going to ask for samples of different flavors, and then you're going to choose the one you like the most. There is absolutely no way for us to definitively know which flavor is our favorite if we haven't tried a few others. So for me personally, every relationship I have ever been in, and I've actually written them down and reflected on them, has taught me something about myself. Relationships are perfect opportunities to mirror back to us our strengths and all the positive, wonderful attributes we bring to the table, as well as our weaknesses, areas that we can become better at, our triggers and our wounds. Sometimes our dating experiences teach us that maybe we need healthier boundaries. And so that's an amazing opportunity for us to learn about boundaries, what they are, how to implement them, how to honor them, and so forth. Sometimes they show us that, we're being manipulative and we need to let go of that tendency. Sometimes they show us that we need to learn communication skills and how to regulate our emotions during conflict so that we don't shut down or storm out of the room or start yelling. Every trigger is an opportunity for self-reflection and growth if, and here's the magic word, if we allow it to be. And by the way, this process will require you to master the art of non-judgment towards yourself. If we're acting in a certain way, it means up until this point, this is all that we knew. This was our best. If I'm storming out of the room in the middle of conflict, it means that that's what was modeled to me. That's what I know how to do. But when we know better, we can do better. And so relationships give us an opportunity to highlight what we need to proactively work on, which is great news because this is a great way to help us grow. In one of the earlier episodes of the podcast, I believe in year 1, I mentioned that from a spiritual perspective, the goal of life is to enter as person A and leave as person B. And sometimes we get to grow through overcoming challenges. And relationships, both platonic and romantic, are also wonderful, powerful mediums through which we can experience this growth and evolvement. Also, every relationship or dating experience shows us what it is that we actually desire in a partner, or what even is possible for us, or what even exists out there. For example, in university, I had this boyfriend who would always show up with flowers or candy on every single date. We dated for almost 2 years, and no exaggeration, he never once showed up empty-handed. Now, it wasn't about the monetary value, because sometimes it would be my favorite candy, which was like 50 cents, or sometimes it would be a rose that he picked from his own garden. But it was the thought behind it. Did he have his flaws? Absolutely, and so did I. But his ability to showcase love through thoughtful gifts, one of the 5 love languages, showed me not only something that I had never experienced before and never seen before in my own family. So now I knew that it exists in real life and not just in books and movies, but he also taught me how to do it as well. I now receive this feedback often from my friends and family members that I'm a thoughtful gift giver. And honestly, I think it really began with him. Or the person I dated during my postgraduate studies, he taught me the importance of learning how to regulate my emotions through his inability to regulate his emotions. I also learned what boundaries were in that relationship. I kept thinking to myself, how can I emotionally protect myself when he is yelling on the phone? And so that led me to taking courses, reading books, and learning about boundaries, and learning how to just simply say, hey, I want to hear you, but if you raise your voice, I will leave this conversation. Such a simple sentence, but a game changer. Learning this was a game changer for my relationship with him, my relationship with myself, and with others. Or another long-term relationship of mine taught me that having a reciprocated, respectful relationship with my partner's family was actually a non-negotiable for me. Before then, I would say it wasn't important, but that's because I had never experienced it. But that relationship showed me that it was. And hey, it might not be for everyone else, but for me it was. So after that, I would always keep an eye out for my relationship with my partner's family and how that looked like. So every date, every partner teaches us something, whether it's showing us our desires or non-negotiables through both their positive and negative traits. So an activity that I love to do with my clients is I ask them to write down a list of traits that they would like in a partner. And every time they go on a date, we come back and I ask them, okay, which one of these traits did they have from this list? And were there any traits that your date had that wasn't on this list, but that you find is important? And sometimes they'll say, yes, my date did X, Y, and Z, and I never thought about it before. Let's add it to the list. And sometimes they'll say, hey, my date had X, Y, and Z that was already on my list, but I realized it's actually not what I want in a partner. And so we take it out of the list. So without these dating experiences, we technically would have no idea who the right one for us looks like. And so friends, that's the point of today's podcast episode. It's embracing the dating journey and not trying to bypass it or rush it or even hate it, because every date gives us insight into who the right person is for us. And that's very valuable information that we need to have. So let us set an intention to shift the way we look at dating and look at all our past dating experiences, and instead to honor them and to appreciate them for helping us gain clarity. Sending you lots and lots of love. Speak soon.
Thank you for joining us this week on Minutes on Growth. If you enjoyed today's episode, then make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.